Welcome to episode number 261 of the Canadian Prepper Podcast. We are recording February the 9th, 2025. My name is Eric, host of the show based in Southern Ontario, hunter, target shooter, ham radio operator. That's going to come into play later on this episode. And a computer geek. As a first responder, witnessed an over-reliance on emergency services during major events and started a small preparedness company to help people get better prepared for at least 72 hours, if not longer.
And my name is Jeff. I am based in Central Ontario. I'm a target shooter, also a ham radio operator, general overall handyman, and weather nerd.
My name is Pierre. I'm a tactical beard owner, base t-shirt guru guy, government critique. More of a ham sandwich guy than ham radio for now, at least.
Well done, sir.
But also the reason we hit the explicit button almost every time pretty much every time I'm on.
Yep. Checks out.
I'm Terry. I'm with Pierre, more of a ham sandwich guy. Live in sunny Central Ontario. The official ground poobah of the Preppers meet. A starving indie author, a terrible hunter, pathetic fisherman. I think I'm a Ford lover again, but it just depends on what happens in the next few weeks. I may be swinging back to the Toyota side. You know, the guy's got to be flexible, just depending on how the tariffs go. And yeah, that's what's going on.
I am Pat Bunker, farmer, rancher, shooting enthusiast, ATC collector, all-terrain cycle. Just to clarify that up. And general outdoorsman, and the official Canadian Prepper Podcast, Token American.
Ooh, them's fighting words.
Yeah, imagine the tariffs we got to pay now.
Yeah.
Just to have him on.
Oh, yeah, it will cost us now.
I'm worth it.
Hey, if you want to support the show, buy some swag. We have both the Canadian Prepper Podcast t-shirt and the tactical Velcro patch at www.prepperpodcast.ca. All proceeds go to help cover our podcast costs, which are getting higher because of Pat.
Sorry, that's not all me, but I might have had a hand in it. I don't know. Weird, stranger things have happened. But anyway, if you're enjoying the show, please take a few minutes and submit a review wherever you found us. We want your Facebook, even if it's bad. We also invite you to reach out and tell us about something you learned this week. You can email us at facebook@prepperpodcast.ca.
It's feedback at prepperpodcast.ca.
It's not Facebook.
You can get us on Facebook, though, as well, if you'd like.
Oh, I must have been a typo. Okay. Anyway.
It's all good. It's all good.
It's a typo up
It's
here.
the tariffs. The tariffs are getting in the way.
Yeah, I saw the F and I immediately said Facebook.
Fair enough.
Delete. Feedback.
So we've got some radiating content for you in this episode. Yes, I've used that joke on pretty much every ham radio episode, but you know what? If it ain't broke, don't fix it. We'll start out with some recent news articles. We'll update you on our personal preps. We're going to get into the main topic. We're talking ham radio tonight. Let's move into the news.
Yeah, so there was a 7.6 magnitude earthquake that hit the Cayman Islands yesterday. No reports of any fatalities. There was, of course, some damage. There was a tsunami warning, but it was canceled about an hour later. There was some waves, but they didn't meet tsunami criteria. So lots of aftershocks, lots of other thumping around, but so far, it looks like they've dodged a bullet on that one at this point.
Nice.
Yeah.
Well, for me, the Donald announced today that he's going to impose 25% tariffs on all steel and aluminum imported to the U.S. Not just us Canucks, but it's from everybody by the looks of it. So he's not discriminating. So yeah, I may have to swing back to the Toyotas again and put a Toyota nameplate on a Ford. I can't afford to get rid of the Ford because I like it too much, but I got to do something.
So are you suggesting that the Ford is breaking down and it needs to be replaced?
No suggestion at all.
Just want to clarify.
I just trying to do the patriotic thing.
And really enjoy the lawn ornament?
Nothing. It's not a lawn ornament. It runs every day. There's a Legion lunch going on somewhere, and I always go.
Fair enough. All right. All right. With that, let's move into what we've done lately for prep, shall we? We'll kick off with Jeff.
I actually went to a preparedness group meeting. They try and do it once a month, so I missed the last couple, so I popped down today. Unfortunately, it was pretty slim for people being there, but I mean, it is what it is. It was snowing, and it's that time of year, but had some good conversations, and as usual, nice to be in a room with a bunch of like-minded people. I moved around some of my firewood for some easier access, as Eric is about to mention in his comments, and I did some fuel rotation.
Didn't know moving firewood around had to do with learning some new cybersecurity skills, but okay.
Yeah, not that one.
So for myself, moved around a ton of snow. We had a lot of snow here the last little bit, and Friday was a little bit of an interesting time with some snowfall. So got that done, and then spent some time learning some new cybersecurity skills. So just brushing up on some ethical hacking techniques. This is the best way to put it, because you wouldn't want to be unethical.
So kind of a bit on that, moving of the ton of snow. So yeah, it was Friday. We got shellacked. We got well over a foot of snow. No big deal. I mean, for us who were prepped, but they closed Highway 11, which is the major highway through my town. They had about a 55 car pileup, and one person unfortunately didn't survive the crash, and so it was closed for hours. I live on a detour route. That, of course, there's tons of snow on the road, and they don't plow it. So the transport trucks couldn't get up the hill, and one of them ended up half sideways right at the end of my driveway. So even if I wanted to go somewhere, I couldn't even get out my driveway for about 4.5 hours. So it was interesting times, but yeah.
All the routes to pretty much get anywhere were closed. It was interesting. The backups for the backups were closed, so we had to use the backup for the backup for the backup to get home from work. So It goes to show you, it's worth having backups to get around places and not just rely on one way.
Yeah. As for myself, I was very fortunate. I did not get as much snow, but busted out the old snowblower just because I didn't want to shovel it. It was a little heavier than the rest of the year we've had down here, and surprisingly, it started because I was partially poor on making sure it worked before the snow. But I guess I did a good job last year when I put it away that everything worked properly, so that was nice. Food rotation, a little bit of fuel rotation, and then that's about it. I didn't do anything with skills, even though I was planning on it, but hopefully that'll be coming up in the next week or two. Get some things lined up, start practicing some first aid stuff, so hopefully that'll work out. Yeah.
Well, I got to admit, I did buy some first aid supplies. Yes, I did that, and I did rotate some fuel through the snowmobile. With all the snow we've had, it's been pretty good going this year. And hey, I've been building ferro rods for the good old preppers meet. Now, this is the big squatch. Go big or go home. It's that's a hell of a good ferro rod. So we're going to have some of those available this year. Just one of the many exciting things. But that's all I've done. I've been doing that and just getting ready for the preppers meeting. A lot of stuff going on right now.
But we'll talk offline more of this, but let me know if you want those handles engraved.
Yes, I've been contemplating on how to do that. Yes. You have a plan, do you?
I have the machine for it.
You do? Oh, okay. There you go.
Yes. So we can.
Always helps to know a guy.
Yeah. We don't only do t-shirts, so we do have a laser engraver. We don't advertise too much on it. But yeah, we can laser engrave wood, almost all metals, and all that. So yeah, we can come up with something. Maybe if we've got time, we can try and make something happen. But we'll discuss more later.
Far out. Okay.
And as far as me, I've been doing some more wood cutting, of course. This seems to be the time of year for it. And got lucky and had a pine tree that was in primo shape for that wood. So harvested a lot of that. So I got several bundles wrapped and dried out and ready to go. So that's been awesome. And hitting the range with a, sorry to bring up sore subject, but hitting the range with a new pistol with a green dot on top of it. And that's my first time ever owning green dot. So I'm sorry, I like it. I can have it. So I'm going to enjoy it.
At least it's a green dot, so it's friendly, right?
Damn.
I vote we fucking kick him out for tonight. Fucking asshole.
I'm sorry.
I'm just gonna go buy a pistol because I can.
Yeah, I'm just gonna. I could probably shoot it. You could probably shoot it in your own fucking backyard too. Why don't
Yes,
you
I
rub
can.
that in?
Okay.
Yeah.
I can shoot it in my own backyard. Sorry, I can't help it. Anyway, that's what I've done lately for preps. I'll just shut up now.
That 51st date thing's looking better every day.
Right.
Yeah. So before we get too fired up about firearms and Pat's ability to shoot his newly acquired firearm in his backyard, because apparently he's got some freedoms, will we move into the main topic, shall we? So if you missed the title, the topic tonight is ham radio, which obviously I'm excited about. And a few other people showed up to be on the panel tonight, so that's awesome. So we're going to touch on a few things tonight in regards to ham radio. We've done ham radio talks a few times on the podcast, but it was asked for again by some of the listeners. So I said, absolutely happy to oblige. Always happy to spend an episode talking about this because, hey, it's a thing I like. And it can be a useful part of emergency preparedness and communication. So we'll touch on some things like just some essentials. We'll touch on getting licensed in Canada. Yes, I know that means you're on a list, but we'll touch on that. We'll get into this key emergency frequencies and what you could be maybe looking out for there, choosing the right equipment, and then just setting up some reliable emergency communication plans. And we'll mix it into a previous episode about mutual assistance groups and how you can maybe find some folks there. And then we'll touch on just the importance of being able to know how to use your equipment. And of course, open it up to free-flowing discussion with the members of the panel, and anybody in the live chat is welcome to jump in as well as we go. If you got any questions, just throw them in and ask away, because having it just be me being a talking head the entire time is no fun. So jump in as we go. So we'll touch on, first of all, just the some essentials. So ham radio is communication format, right? So it's radio communications to be able to speak to other folks with radios. Fairly simple. But it can have an importance in emergency preparedness, even if it's just a small little thing, up to giant natural disasters, right? Like we had that big Rogers outage, it was a couple of years ago now. Oh, look at Terry with the Baofeng.
Got the radio. That's an Eric radio.
Oh, look at that. Very
Up
nice.
them good folks at Rapid Survival. Anyway, sorry for
Look
jumping.
at that. No, it's okay. It's all good. And Pat's got Baofeng as well. Look at that. Pierre's got one, and I'm sure Jeff's probably got one floating around. Yeah, and oh, look at that. I got one floating around too. So maybe it's a good segue to talk about these off the top, because the Baofeng radios are probably the most popular radio in the prepper world. And really, the reason for that is they're cheap. Right? They're not overly expensive. They work, and they get the job done. And I call them the gateway radio into ham radio, because they're just that. They're cheap. They're easy to operate for the most part. They can be a little finicky at times, but for the most part, you can pay $50-$60 here in Canada. I know in the US they're like, I don't know, 10 cents if you translate that into Canadian, but it's
Close.
They're easy to find. They're all over the place. You can find them on Amazon. You can find them on eBay. You can find them pretty much anywhere. Yeah. And they're fairly cheap. So if you go drop $50 on one and you break it, well, you can replace it, grab another one. They're fairly well documented now. When they first came out, they were a little bit tricky to find documentation on and information about how to utilize them and program them. But now it's been a few years. There's some pretty good documentation out there and guides as to how to use them, because They are made in China, so they do come with a nice little user manual that is, not the best translated into English. So you get a few things where you're like, I don't really know what they mean, but you can find some other manuals online that go into these things inside out and backwards, and they're great to have, and you'll see them all over the place in the prepper world because, like I said, they're cheap, they're popular, they're easy to use for the most part, and they're now thankfully well documented.
Yeah, and if they're not well documented, you just need to find yourself an Eric. Right. Yeah. So
fair enough.
Question. Right. Baofangs.
Go for it.
Everybody says,
Yep.
hey, they're cheap. I have 6 of them. I think, like a bunch of different whatever.
Sure.
Right. They're cheap, reliable. They tend to work. What are other options that would be, say, fine, may come with an extra dollar value, but better reliability and easier to use, that someone, instead of spending the $50 and then, a year later saying, fine, I'll spend 70 now. Some people may be okay with spending 100 right off the get-go and getting something that's a little, say, easier or a little more robust or whatever. So what are options other than the Baofangs?
Yeah. So the Baofangs are going to be kind of your number one for entry level. As soon as you kind of get used to those, you're going to realize some shortcomings, and you're going to realize some different modes of communication that you may want to get into. So DMR, for example, it's a digital mode. Was developed for business, but it's been ported over, I guess is the best term to use, into ham radio. So you could get into like a little TYT, like this guy here, the MD 390. That guy runs about $250 ish, and it opens up. You can still do what the Baofang does. So you can do your UHF, VHF frequencies, as long as you get one that does that. It comes in models that'll only do VHF and UHF, where you can get the dual. But then that opens up DMR, which is a digital mode, which then opens up worldwide communications. But there's a caveat to that. It works over the internet. So some ham radio purists will tell you that it's not radio. You still use your radio to speak to a hotspot that then transmits the frequency back to you that it gets from the internet. So there's a little bit of radio being used there, but it does require internet to do the worldwide comms with it. But that would kind of be your next step up into something like that. Or you could look at, there's the VGC, was it the VRN76 that just came out? It's about $250 as well. And it'll do APRS, which is the automatic packet relay system, which is if there's repeaters in your area that support that, you can beacon out your location, you can beacon out messages, you can send messages to cell phones from it and receive messages back and forth. You can do WinLink with it, which is email. So up in the price to around $250, $300 mark gets you a lot more capabilities. You can do WinLink with the Baofangs as well, but it takes a little bit of finicking around and playing with to do. Whereas the N76 kind of has the functionality built in. So up in a little bit, you get a lot more function, if that answers the question. I know we went on a little bit of a squirrel moment there. That's going to happen a lot tonight, just FYI.
No, but I mean, so like that's pretty much where it is, right? Like Baofang run you 50-ish bucks, and then the next one is like you're right up to the 200 mark. There's no like 100 like.
Yeah, for the most part, especially with the Canadian dollar tanking right now. That's where you're going to kind of sit, right? Yeah, tariffs. Thanks, Pat. So, and then after that, you're starting to jump into the $500-$600 range. Believe it or not, there's a handheld from Kenwood that retails for $1,000 Canadian.
It's not. I can put that on debit. They accept e-transfers.
Yeah, they'll take your money, no problem. Yeah, it's a very nice radio, and it has a lot of really cool features. And I've eyeballed it a few times, but
at
this radio, it's like that's way too much.
Right, there's no perks at that point for the right. There's a dollar value added. Yeah. Like, is it worth it?
At $100 here, I think that's a little expensive for me.
Fair enough, Pat. I have looked at it US retailers just to kind of give the perspective. It's about $550-$600 US, which is still, I think, insane for a handheld. But if it's your thing and it does the things you need it to do, then great. But so really, that's the thing with ham radio. You could spend as little as you want or as much as you want. It's definitely a hobby where you can sink a ton of money into it if you want to, or you can stick with just a little handheld Baofeng for $50 or so, and away you go. And they all serve a purpose, right? Having that lower dollar value Baofeng in your bag can get out to the repeater, same as that $1,000 Kenwood radio, right? If you're in the exact same location, both of them are probably going to get out to that repeater. It's a matter of what other features and functionalities you want the radio to have. And quite honestly, in the preparedness kind of emergency kind of mindset, you almost want it to have less features. You want it to be specific to one, maybe two things that are in your plan. Because if you start adding all these bells and whistles and complexities to it, it gets confusing, right? So having something kind of mid-range is probably, the best way to go for building around for your emergency communications. If you're doing the hobby thing and you're not using it for emergency comms, then having all the bells and whistles and lights and flashy stuff, then yeah, sure. My opinion anyways. But
yeah, and you have to bring it fairly simple, because high stress situation. Eric, what you do for a living, what most of us have all done for a living, you're going to resort back to, that simple KISS. Keep it simple, stupid.
Exactly.
Right? If you got all these bells and whistles where, I can, if I turn this knob, a quarter turn, and then this one, and I got to do it in this sequence and this, that, blah, blah, blah. Right. Where I'm like, this Baofeng is literally like, turn the knob, put it on the band I want, have it written down. You can get stickers put on the back of the batteries for repeaters in your local area. Have something pinned to it or whatever. Right. Like those sticker makers are fairly cheap. I bet you if you've got like small small businesses around that make their own labels or whatever, go in, just be like, hey, charge me a coffee. Can you make me a little sticker that has these two numbers on it, and stick them to, or I need 6 of them, put them on all your batteries just in case this one's not on it or whatever, right? Keeping it simple is probably a lot better than getting that real fancy one.
Exactly. And Joan in the live chat has a good point. Still comes down to a reliable repeater. Yeah, when we're talking about handhelds, if the repeater is kind of in your preparedness plans, then absolutely, yeah, you still need something that's reliable. And let's just touch on that real quick as far as what repeaters are. So within your communities, chances are, and you can check this out on websites like Repeater Book, or Radio Reference, chances are there will be a repeater set up by your local ham radio club. If it's not exactly directly in your town, it might be the town over or the next major city, but it'll be set up by your local ham club. And what it is exactly as the name sounds like. It takes your signal and repeats it. So your handheld is probably going to go up to maybe 5 watts. It's usually what they run. It'll send a signal to the repeater. The repeater could be 50, 100 watts, whatever the club kind of sets out. It'll take that signal that goes into it and it'll repeat it back out at that power. So you get way more range, and it's usually on a tower that's way up in the sky. So your signal disperses to a large area where your handheld would never be able to reach to. But because of that repeating ability, your signal goes much further. So she's 100% correct. It does come down to a reliable repeater, because if you're in an emergency situation, say where there's no power, if that repeater has no reliable source of power backup, be it batteries, solar, generator, etc., and it goes down, then it's of absolutely no use to you. Right? So it's a great point. I see some confusion on Pierre's face.
Yeah, he said a lot of words.
It happens.
Yeah, no, it happens a lot when we talk about this. I end up like getting info, then also having a bunch of questions that I don't understand how to say, and then just walk away more confused. And then we keep doing episodes, and I'm like, it slowly gets clear. But yeah.
And Joe makes another point in the live chat, just saying, I like the concept of ham radio. Too intimidated with wiring and antenna expense and know-how. Looking for guidance now. Best thing to do, and we've said this in other episodes as well, is get to know your local ham radio club. they're going to be more than welcoming. There'll be the one crotchety guy in the corner that just does nothing but complain, but you got that guy in every club.
I was like, is it Eric or Jeff? I was just about to ask.
So, close. Yeah, but probably 99% of them are going to be welcoming, and they want you to have a setup, and they want you to be using the repeaters and the airwaves in the area because it keeps the hobby alive, right? And you're someone else they can talk to.
It does seem like it's on the way down, right? Certain scenarios, most people, like preppers and people that find a second use for it, but I'm like, this is not a hobby of most people, just because I'm like, they don't even think this thing still goes on.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
You're right. Like most people probably think this is dead and it shouldn't be around. But it's a thing where I'm like, yeah, if you reach out and you come off friendly and hey, I got a bunch of questions, sit down, right? We talk about it here, but and we've done a live episode where Eric has shown how this happens and this, that, and this, that, and how it all works. But I'm like, to sit down and 1-on-1 or, 3-on-1 with a bunch of people at the fucking place will probably make a huge difference.
And they love just helping out. It's you're somebody else in the club. They like helping out. They like getting everybody up and running and sharing knowledge and information. It's the number one place to go is check out your local ham radio club. And you don't have to get all crazy with wiring and antennas and expensive stuff like we've touched on. You can get into it, $50 Canadian, which is like $5 American right now, with a little handheld Baofeng, and then away you go. Right? It's it doesn't have to be any more complicated than that. And there's really good YouTube videos out there that document the Baofeng radio and how to program it and set it up. And then just repeater book for the repeaters that are in your area. Of course, you do have to be licensed if you're going to be transmitting on those repeaters. I know I'll get some guff about, I don't need to be licensed to use the radio, blah, blah, blah. That's up to you. You make your own decisions. Everyone listening is an adult. But while times are good, rules do apply. And the rules, at least in North America, require you to have some form of licensing, depending on what your government says you need. So in Canada, there's licensing, and we'll touch on that in a minute. There is licensing in the US as well. There's 3 different licenses you can get in the US. There's 2 in Canada, and we'll touch on those in a couple minutes after we get through this section here. But some fantastic questions from Joan. And then see, the problem in here is asking about how do you go about longer wave when you have a 20 by 40 foot backyard in the city? Vertical antenna. And away you go, depending on where you want to get to.
But he also, I'm pretty sure there was somewhere there where bylaw says 30 feet up. I think just under that. So
30 feet's better than 0 feet. As long as the antenna is in the air.
You need 6 to 8 feet off the ground for a good NVIS antenna?
Yep. Well, to give you an idea, like myself and Jeff will go do parks on the air in the local park here. We'll take an end-fed antenna, which is just, there's a little box on one end that your cable plugs into your radio, and then we throw the wire into the tree. That's not overly long. What's that got to be? Maybe 20 feet, Jeff, if that. It's not crazy. Yeah, it's not crazy long. Nope. And up in the tree it goes, and we've made contacts with Spain and Portugal and France and all over the US, and even with local operators in town. So it's and that's not anywhere near 30 feet. So there's totally ways to do it. It just it kind of depends on your rules and regulations in your area. As well, a common thing that people think is they have to stretch that wire antenna out, and it can't bend, it can't twist, you can twist it and turn it and L shape it and draw it along your fence if you want. It can bend. It doesn't have to be a straight shot. So you can bend it and move it around and that. So keep that in mind as well. Any other questions in the live chat here before we move on? A good one from Justin about just a homebrew J-pole and the Baofeng. Yeah, it's a good one as well. Since we're on the topic of antennas, antenna is the big thing to spend the money on. If you go and grab a Baofeng and you get the little, what we would refer to as the rubber duck antenna, which is the antenna that comes with it, replace that. Because does it get the job done? Absolutely. If you can't afford to replace it, then use that one. At least it's an antenna and it gets the job done. But if you can go get a third-party antenna from like Comet or Diamond or whoever else, go and do it, because the one that comes with it is, it gets the job done. But you get the third-party ones there. Much nicer. They will be longer though as well, so keep that in mind. Sometimes you don't want the big longer antenna because it's going to poke your eye out or something. So there's all kinds of different lengths and choices there. But definitely look at a different type of antenna for your handheld as soon as you have the funds available after you've splurged and made the first purchase.
So I'm not going to say the jokes I was thinking. It's probably inappropriate.
From you? We never thought about it. Another thing I noticed this from Justin in the live chat with the handhelds is storm reporting. So you can pick up weather repeaters with them as well. Usually some of them come pre-programmed for it. Some of them you got to program in yourself. It's a great point, Justin. You can do all the weather reporting with them as well. So it's kind of got a dual purpose, and the Baofangs as well will do FM radio. So you can listen to your FM radio stations, you can listen to your weather radio stations, and you can transmit on your ham frequencies. Some will also transmit on FRS and GMRS. Technically, that's a no-no in Canada. I'm not quite sure how it works in the US, but it's good to go in the US. Oh, look at that! So more freedom for Pat.
Yeah. Why is he still here?
I know, right? But go ahead, Pierre.
No, so I was just thinking, right? Like, so most Baofangs have this nice little option on the side where you put a mic and a speaker.
Yep.
What are your thoughts on having this for preparedness, but also potentially you need to put it in a thing that you might have to carry and have stuff with you to communicate with maybe close neighbors or a certain group of friends, because a scenario is called for cell phones don't work and let's keep close communication on these. So are Baofangs just as reliable for that as well?
For doing like line of sight communication, cutting the repeater out, basically?
Two-way radio.
Okay, gotcha.
Right?
Yeah. So
turning it into a two-way radio, right? I have one.
So,
I have a neighbor, a few blocks over has one, and a scenario has happened where, hey, let's use this, and you might have to put some extra gear on and this, that, and whatever. So they're just as good, a little bit better than two ways.
That's what we refer to as simplex. So radio to radio communication. So that's cutting out the repeater altogether. So you would program in a frequency, you have the same frequency on the other radio, and then you can talk to each other. So like 146.52, which is the national calling frequency, for example, you can put that on, and both of you can talk to each other briefly and then move to another frequency once you make initial contact. Totally doable. Yeah, you don't have to have a repeater. Actually, fantastic question, because we focus so much on repeater there. Yeah, you can do just radio to radio communications. It's line of sight, right? So you have to be like, your radio has to be able to see the other radio, so there can't be like obstructions. And no, they don't have eyes. I can see that thought in your head, Pierre, that they have to the antennas have to be able to pick up each other's transmissions in order to be able to hear each other and transmit back and forth. But yes, they can do simplex or radio to radio communications as well. So you don't need the repeater. The repeater just helps further the signal, but it's not necessarily required.
So would you say that maybe even if you're not going to use the ham radio thing, a Baofang would be a better option compared to those two-way radios you buy at Canadian Tire for roughly the same price? And is it mostly because you can use separate frequencies than 1 to 22?
The nice part with the Baofangs is you're pushing up to 5 watts of power, which just gets your signal that much further. The handhelds that you get, like the FRS radios that you get at Canadian Tire, are set to FRS frequencies. Now, the nice thing with those is they are license free. So again, while times are good, you can use those, no problem. You don't have to worry about licensing, regulations, rules, that kind of stuff. But they're only pushing about 0.5 watts to a watt, depending on the frequency you're on. So you get a little bit more oomph out of the Baofangs, which means you can get a little bit more further. So a little bit more reliable communications that way. And we got the answer here in Steve's shop has mentioned as well. The Canadian Tire radios are 200 milliwatts, so they're not even 0.5, and the Baofangs are 4 and higher, right? So yeah, you're getting a lot more oomph that way. And so if you got the time to go out and get the license, or if you're that rebel that says I don't need the license, screw you. Well, You're an adult. You make your own choices. The Baofeng will do you much better than those. And don't believe the Canadian Tire little FRS radios that say they'll do 30, 40, 50 kilometers. They won't. That's if you're standing at the top of a mountain and the receiving radio's at the bottom of the mountain. Maybe, but no.
And the wind has to go.
Yeah.
And the wind has to go north to west.
Correct.
Yeah.
And the Canadian dollar has to be higher than the American. And,
and
all that kind of fun stuff.
Yeah. And we won on the Terror 4, which will never happen. And
okay,
so I get it.
It's just not a thing, right? So
I'll do a quick jump in. These little this Baofeng 8-watt, the whole family's got them. We use them moving cows and stuff on a separate channel and everything. It's totally legal on the channels that we run it. And I can have several big hills with the 8-watters and still push just fine. We use them on road trips. We're going camping and stuff like that in vehicles, and even boat to boat when we're out on the lake and stuff like that. So yeah, if you got a good 5 or even an 8-watter on the Baofeng, and as long as you don't have a complete mountain on either side, then yeah, usually you can push through at a reasonable distance.
Right. Yeah, it's not. There's going to be a lot of it depends answers when it comes to the ham radio.
Exactly.
It really does depend on your terrain, on your environment, on even just the day. It really it all totally depends. But the handheld Baofeng is probably, like I said, the gateway radio into all other radio, and it can perfectly be just the only radio you have for emergency preparedness because it's better than having no radio at all. But once you get bit by the bug, you'll end up eventually upgrading and changing around a little bit. But at least I think. I like to justify that because I did it.
Me too.
Can you hear me?
And ham radio has been used in real world kind of disasters. The most recent being North Carolina with Hurricane Helene. Right, that if anybody else was listening to that repeater, it was put online. And there was ham radio operators relaying assistance and help, and even to the point of helping kind of coordinate drops for supplies and such. Because they had, like Joan mentioned earlier, they had a very reliable repeater in the area that was at just a great location, nice and high up on some hills or some mountaintops, and it could get out to lots and lots of area. So it was just a perfect setup for that kind of unfortunate scenario. So it can be used and is used in emergency situations. So it's kind of good to know how to use it ahead of time.
Can you guys hear me?
I can hear you just fine. Yep.
Okay, cool. Sorry, my headphones were dying, so I had to go get the cord to wire me in. Sorry. Apologies. Carry on.
Way to be prepared for the podcast, Pierre.
Bro, this is the first time in like, I don't know, 11 weeks I have to do it. I do 2 podcasts a week. Battery life is crazy on these, but yeah, it's a thing.
Fair enough. So Dave's got a good question in the live chat. Do I need a license to use line of sight mode? So simplex. So everybody's ready for it. It depends. Okay. So if you're using the FRS or GMRS in Canada, no license required. You can use that with those radios you get from just the blister packs at the Canadian Tire. In the US, GMRS, there is a requirement for licensing as far as I know, but FRS, not so much. And those would be line of sight or simplex, no license required. If you're chatting on the ham radio frequencies, so frequencies in your respective country that are designated for amateur radio use, then you do still need a license to transmit on those frequencies. So just do the research for your respective country for which frequencies are amateur or ham radio band frequencies versus FRS GMRS, and then away you go. But ham radio frequencies, simplex license still required because the government wants their money.
Okay, so you said a bunch of acronyms, and those confused me. So
all right. What's the first one? FRS? Family Radio Service.
Okay, so that's what your regular
whatever. If you buy
everywhere, right?
if you buy a radio from Canadian Tire, and it's in that little blister pack, and the antenna is not removable, and it's just got set channels like 1 through I think 14. That is FRS or family radio service. If you buy like the Baofeng, like these guys here, and it's got the programmable keypad on the front and all that kind of stuff, then you're probably looking at an amateur or ham radio. You'll hear them referred to as either amateur radio or ham radio. But that's that'll be the
There was
difference.
another acronym you used. It was like
GMRS.
Yeah, that one.
There you go. So Pat's got the radios there, so that would be your little family band.
Okay, but what's the GMRS?
GMRS. You know what? It's been so long since I've had to look up that acronym. It's basically
Here we are thinking
family.
you'd be
It's
fucking
basically
prepared.
I know, right? You would think I'd be prepared to talk about this stuff, but we're talking about ham radio, not GMRS radio. But
You brought it up.
I know I did, but so it's basically the family band. So it's an unlicensed frequency set in Canada that doesn't require licensing to transmit on. In the US, though, there is a requirement to get a license. So we do have a little bit of freedom here. We can transmit on GMRS without a license.
It's a okay. We're not gonna.
It's,
Yeah, okay, sure. Okay, so it's just another form of.
It's a set of frequencies. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So
Okay.
but speaking of licenses, we may as well segue into that. So in Canada, there are 2 different license classes that you can obtain. So one is basic, the other is advanced. So basic examination, yes, you have to take an exam. Yes, everybody hates exams. Good news is the exams are multiple choice. And I know some of you are saying, I hate multiple choice, but at least it's not essay style where you got to write everything out, right? So it's 100 when in doubt. When in doubt, answer C. And but it is 100 questions for the basic exam. If you score 80% or higher, then you end up with your basic with honors, which opens up HF frequencies for you. So if you don't hit the higher score, you can use your Baofeng radio. You can do UHF, VHF. You can't do HF, which is like the worldwide communication stuff. If you hit basic with honors, then it opens up HF for you as well, which is high frequency. And then if you want to go and write your advanced is 50 questions, so 50. Same thing, multiple choice. It does have to be done. Both of them have to be proctored by a certified license proctor or examiner. And you can write that exam, and then away you go. If you pass that one, you get your advanced. Advanced allows you to do things like help work on repeaters, bumps up your power a little bit. You can do remote operation, which is kind of interesting as well. But really, for the purposes of emergency preparedness, you'd be just fine with your basic with honors if you're just looking to use the radios and get some experience. If you want to help out your club with maintaining repeater systems and that kind of stuff and boost the power, and you can build your own radio setups as well. Versus the basic, you can only build kits that come pre-manufactured. But that's
So it's like
we're getting into the nerd stuff here now.
No, but so one of them you can buy your own Legos and make whatever you want. The other one you have to buy a Lego kit and follow the instructions.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's a good way of putting it. Yeah, it's actually a fantastic way of putting it.
Yeah,
I like it.
Like one of them you have to buy all these parts that are approved and put together. The other one you can source out your own parts.
Your own parts and build your own. You could you print your own circuit board if you want and make your own system completely from scratch.
It gives more power, and then you go and something burns down. You can do that.
Well, you have to go rah. Yeah, it's required when you build it. Yeah, you have to.
Okay.
Yeah. The good part about the exams, and some people don't like this, but the entire question bank is available online. So you can Google like Canada Amateur Radio Exam, and you can actually go and look at the entire question bank. You can have a test auto-generated for you, so you can actually take the test, not proctored, so you're not going to get your license if you pass it, but you can kind of practice the test and get a feel for what the questions are like. And then once you're ready, you can find an accredited examiner and go and write the actual exam, which is which is handy. Kind of helps take some of the stress away, I found, anyways, to be able to go through the question bank first and kind of, okay, this is how they're worded, this is what they're asking. So that's always nice.
So
same with the advanced. You can get the question bank online.
Okay, so other than Jeff, because he probably had to chisel it in stone when he did his, but like, does it tell you which questions you got wrong and what the proper question was when you do those tests? Those automated ones generated?
It'll break it all down for you. It'll show you what you got right, what you should focus on, etc., which is super handy for studying and kind of knowing what to focus on. If you got a good grasp on things already, great, right?
Because I hate that when you get it when you do a test and it's just like, oh, you got 15 wrong, but they don't tell you which 15.
Yeah, and no, it tells you.
And everything, and then it's just like, well, yeah. So okay, perfect.
And then in Canada, you can look at COAX publications as well, and they make a guide, so a book for studying, and then they've got online resources as well where you can practice, do exams, and other online resource things as well. So COAX publications is a good spot to kind of check out for studying and guides and such. And then Radio Amateurs of Canada, or RAC, another good spot to check out for studying. Then they actually have a whole list of online resources for studying and courses that are available, and they actually do an online course. So if people don't want to go to a physical classroom to learn, you can do the online course. They usually do that in the spring and the winter, and it's usually pretty full of people. And I did the advanced one. It was pretty well done, and just another option for you for studying if you are looking at getting into this. And then maybe any other questions about that, Pierre, or anybody else?
No, I was gonna change the subject, but you already got something.
No, go
for it. So I was looking at, like, okay, someone's decided they bought the Baofeng, they did whatever, they've got something, now they want to get set up at home.
Mm-hmm.
What are we looking at? So we've got antennas, which got me more.
You are looking at the biggest rabbit hole you have ever met in your life.
Right?
Here we go.
And we have gotten so many rabbit holes that I'm more confused that I'm like, I'm just going to use this, and I'm going to put like a 60-foot antenna on this that keeps it off balance, because that's apparently how this works.
So there's all kinds of options, and we're still kind of sticking in the UHF, VHF kind of area, which is what your handhelds will do. So you can, and this confused me at first when I first got into the ham radio. Mobile radios, so they're designed for install in your vehicles. You can put those in what we would refer to as your shack or your radio room. So in front of me, so like Pat's got one there. This little mobile radio, it's a little 10-meter radio. I've got two sitting here in front of me, TYT 9800 and the 9600. I got the 9800 in my truck as well, but they will do the repeaters in town. I can do simplex with them. I can do all that kind of stuff with those radios. And I've got an antenna that just goes out to the roof. That'll do the 2 meters and 70 centimeters are your UHF, VHF frequencies for ham. But that kind of threw me off when I first got into picking out my equipment. It's like, well, I don't want a mobile radio. I want something that will work, that I can put in my office here and run an antenna outside. Mobile radio, and then just got it mounted on a piece of 2x4 here right now. But you can get as fancy as you want with setting that up. And then you go down the rabbit hole of like HF setups, and that's a whole other. That's when you get into the worldwide type of communications, and it can get expensive. It can get pricey. Like the mobile radios themselves can get a little bit pricey. Like the TYT runs about $250-$300. And then it'll do up to 50 watts of power. So you're obviously pushing out a little bit more power, so you can get a little bit further with it. And then you get into the whole high frequency world where you've got worldwide communication just off of, like, for example, the wire that me and Jeff will set up in the park if we're doing like some parks on the air stuff. But the nice thing with having like the mobile setups in an office or inside, you can monitor emergency broadcasts. You can coordinate with other ham radio operators if something is going on. You've got kind of that permanent setup, so you've got something ready to go, which will have hopefully some kind of dedicated power as well. or something in the vehicle. Again, when the vehicle's running, they'll have power for the radio, and away you go. But yeah, there's a whole rabbit hole of things that you can get, and then all those radios will have specific different things that they can do. Like the 9600 that's here in front of me will do DMR, right? It'll do digital, which is nice in this area because a lot of our fire departments use DMR, so I can listen to those communications, right? Without that DMR radio, I wouldn't be able to listen to it. With the 9800, it's just analog, so I can do just ham radio communications with it and talk on the local repeater and talk to the other radio nerds in the area without any real issue. So there's all kinds of rabbit holes you can go down with this stuff. But
so are most bases interswappable between regular wall plugs in your house and being able to bring them out and run them in your vehicle?
You've got all the good questions, Pierre.
So, I was smart because I already know the answer to this one.
You do know the answer to this. So the radios run on DC, so they are not going to have your standard wall plug because your wall plugs are AC. So you do need some kind of a power source in the vehicle. Yeah, you can connect them to the wiring in the vehicle if you know how to do that. Caveat: if you don't have any clue, get somebody who knows what they're doing to hook it up for you.
Like, do they have just cigarette lighter plugins, or that's
they
not
can?
an option for?
Yep, that's a good one too.
Okay.
So some of them do come with the cigarette lighter plug-in. So if you're looking for something that's just temporary, you can plug them into the cigarette lighter, throw an antenna on like a magnet mount on your roof, and go. Just being careful that some of these will draw a lot more power than what your cigarette lighter can really have or support.
Put a bigger fuse in it, you'll be all right.
Yeah, it's fine. Yeah, just take the fuse out and just bridge it. It's fine. It's fine. Yeah, don't worry about it.
Just
Right?
the old paperclip trick.
If it's short period of time, go for it. Use it in the cigarette lighter. But just the caveat of if you're going to be pushing some higher power through it, you might blow the fuse or burn out the wiring. So just be careful. Always, if you can hardwire it into the vehicle, it's always the best way to go. And then at home, you're going to need some kind of a power supply that does DC. So because your typical wall plug does not do DC, and you can get those power supplies at your local ham radio shop. They're pretty easy to come by. And I've got one up here that runs my two UHF VHF radios, and it runs my HF radio, so you can split the power and run multiple radios off of them, no problem. So
so all radios are a 12-volt system?
Yep, 13.8 usually.
Yep.
Just to screw with you.
Well, which is
12.
Technically what a 12-volt battery sits at when it's properly charged.
When it's full.
That's
full. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, they do like a consistent 13.8 if they can get it, but they will, as the battery drops, the ability to transmit at higher power just kind of drops a little bit, obviously, because you're not pushing as much into the radio. But
so are you just like shrinking your communication area at that point if it comes down? Is that all it does?
Pretty much, yeah. You're just not as loud to people. They won't be able to hear you as well. That's all.
So you just
you're talking quieter, I guess is the.
But if you yell more into the thing,
no, doesn't help.
But you said I wasn't as loud.
Well, yeah, your radio isn't as loud.
Well, just turn the volume up.
Oh my
God!
Look, here we go. On to the next.
Persistent little bugger, isn't he?
he is persistent. But you know what? That's why we have him come back, because it's fun.
That's right. That's
right. Anybody catch any of the other good questions in the live chat here?
I don't know. I'm not paying attention. I'm too busy trying to think of stuff.
Steve's shop's got a good one here. An ICOM 7000 Yaesu FT857D. That's a nice, no longer in production radio. Mobile radios, but work fine with power supply at home, hooked up to the computer for easier use. Yeah, that's another rabbit hole you can go down. You can hook these up to the computer if you want. We're not going down that rabbit hole, but you can hook them up to the computer and do all kinds of fun stuff with them as well. If anybody wants to know about that, feedback at prepperpodcast.ca. I will happily nerd out with you about it. But we won't go down that rabbit hole this evening because I'm cognizant of the time. We've already killed an hour almost. It's impressive. Who knew?
And I have
radio.
More questions.
More questions.
Yeah.
Really, the main thing with ham radio is it gives you that mode of communication, right? It's not going to be your be all, end all, solve all your problems of communication, but it's a nice to have, especially if the cell network goes down, internet goes down, you have no other mode of communication, it's a great thing to have in your back pocket for, I had nothing else, everything else is gone. It's simply not going to compete with cell or internet. Right? Like it's just not a thing. You can interface it with the internet. Like I kind of alluded to earlier, you can send email over it. So if your general area is without power, without internet, without anything else, but somewhere else within range of you, and when I say within range, it could be anywhere else in the world. If you're running on HF, still has power and still has internet access, you can potentially still send an email. You can still potentially get a message out or receive a message to a specific email address hooked into that what's called WinLink. So you can still do that. It's still a possibility, but it of course all depends on what is still available. If it's not a localized disaster, then it may not be a possibility for you. But if it is localized, you could still potentially be able to access internet and email and that over radio, which is very nerdy to do, and I have fun with it. But it does help just establish that communication network, right? Which is important in an emergency type of situation.
Yeah, so there is a good comment. Someone asked if they mind if they share this with a big group of similar-minded people, about 50,000 plus people in it. If you're not, you're a shitty prepper, and he sounds like he lives in Texas. So take that with a grain of salt. I know.
Yeah. Share away.
Share away.
Yep.
I mean, obviously, for all we know, there might be something Eric doesn't know or is scratching his head about something, and
just like what GMRS stands for.
Yeah. Maybe they can just spread it on that. So,
yep.
Are there any kits out there? So, 90% of the population does have battery operated tools. Are there kits out there that you can plug like a Milwaukee 12-volt battery on something and be able to maybe not power it up for long, but
I have heard of such a thing happening.
I would imagine somebody has MacGyvered something like that for sure.
What about taking your 18 volt, like 12 amp battery and bumping it down to a 12 and run it off that?
You could.
Yes. The original DeWalt 12 volt system back in the day. If you got a good sized battery on that, my brother did a science experiment and was able to power his mobile unit off of 2 batteries, banked them together in parallel and shot it out. And it worked great.
Right. Like I've got the Milwaukee ones because I've got the heated jackets. There was a crazy good sale on bigger batteries. So I'm just thinking, right, like, hey, I've already got these laying around. And I don't use them enough.
They probably won't last long, but in a pinch, anything is better than nothing, right?
Yep.
Yeah,
that is the fun part.
All day.
That's the fun part with this hobby is it's built around experimentation, right? That's the whole kind of idea around it, is to experiment and play with things and figure out what does and doesn't work, which I figure a lot of preppers have that mindset as well, of just what's going to work, what doesn't work, what can I do to solve this problem in this situation. So yeah, if you wanted to build that and see if it worked, and that's the nice thing with the Baofeng, if you fry it, well, you can go grab another one. You don't want to like fry a whole pile of them because eventually it's going to add up a little bit. But if you got a few and you want to
it'll
fry them
keep
up,
you in business.
If I was allowed to sell them again, that's a whole other story. But
I didn't know that. I could know.
Oh yeah. Yeah, I had Industry Canada come knocking at my door a little while ago saying, "Thou shalt not sell these anymore." And that was all because they were, they've been fixed now. This was a couple of years ago. When they were first being imported into Canada, they were completely unlocked and open to transmit on pretty much any frequency that it could transmit on, including emergency services and other frequencies, which really it shouldn't be able to transmit on. So they're now locked, and there's ways to unlock them, but we won't get into that. And they come locked, so now Industry Canada is happy with them, but it is what it is.
Are you getting those in at some point? The locked ones, at least?
No, because they became so popular, it's set to only certain people can bring them in. So, I had my time. Yep. I had my time. And I see Steve's asking questions. They just called me. They didn't come to my door, but they called me and said, you either pay $100,000 fine or you just stop selling them. And I opted for okay, I'll stop selling. So here's what it is.
Don't tread on me. Doesn't work up here.
And we had, we talked about mags a couple episodes ago. Actually, last episode was not. So
that's not.
Fantastic for mags, right? Every mutual assistance group is going to need the communications guy or gal. So having the ability to pass radios out and quickly show people how to use them in a bad kind of situation is great, or even just doing some training with them ahead of time to be prepared for communications if things fall apart, and then being able to study with that mutual assistance group for writing the exam would be very useful, very handy. So it does play it's probably a key role in a mutual assistance group. You've got your medics, you've got your folks with skills in other areas, you've got your communications people, security people, your mechanics, doctors, all that kind of stuff, and then you got your comms person. So always a spot for that. And just training, right? It's a lot of people think they'll just take this thing, they'll program it up for whatever frequencies are in your area that they think are going to be useful. They toss it in the corner and it sits there. Now you throw the stress of a bad situation in place and you say, go get your radio. We got to start doing this communication thing because the cell towers are down. The internet's down. I got no other way to communicate. Go grab the radios and you have no idea how to use it. Practice, which is where licensing comes in. Yes, I know you're going to be on a list. The government's going to know where you live. They're going to know you have radios. They don't know how many radios you have.
You're on the
right?
list.
They're already listening. They're already listening. They don't know how many radios you have, but it's just being able to practice with these things and the connections that it opens up. I've been actually, and I know I've said this a bunch of times, it's actually surprised me how many like-minded individuals are on the radio or involved in amateur radio that also have a preparedness mindset. I didn't expect that, but I get talking to them on repeaters as I'm traveling around. I'll hop on different repeaters. Usually I'll mention, I run a podcast. You should check it out. And all of a sudden we start talking about preparedness and you get somebody else hop on and say, hey, I heard you talking about this. Or I heard you talking about preparedness. And then there's a whole bunch of people with the exact same mindset. So it gives you kind of that opportunity to speak to some folks. And then going back to the mutual assistance talk last week, gives you that opportunity to maybe build up that group or build up that mutual assistance group. After, obviously, we mentioned in that episode, you get to know them a little bit better. You can talk to them some more and, figure out what they're all about. But there's a lot of like-minded people already in this hobby. So why not jump in and see who you can connect with? And worst case, you got some practice using the radio, right?
Yeah, but most people suck. Why do you want to talk to more?
Well, it is what it is. A few of them are okay. The rest of them suck. I get it.
Yeah. But I mean, I'll eventually get there. I know it's been a plan for the last few years, but it's on the back burner with a few other things we got to do, finish some renos. So funds are going for renos and that compared to also I need the space to, if everything is successful and everything, I want to set something up and the renos need to happen before I can,
Yeah, of course.
So, yeah. But I mean, I at least got my little handheld here that can get to the right frequencies if a scenario happens.
Yep. And really,
I've got an Eric for when I have questions.
Well, there you go. And really, that's kind of the whole point of the talk this evening is that, and you've seen me rabbit hole down a couple of areas for things,
so many.
But there's so many little facets and little things that you can get into with amateur radio. If you start out with a little handheld, you learn how to use that, and you are able to do at least some level of communication with that. You are light years ahead, and you're ready to go. Right? It's the way to do it. It's much, you've got that ability to do the communications, whereas others maybe don't. Right?
Yep. Yeah. So. Yeah. Got no more questions. My brain's done. It's cooked tonight.
And we could scroll into like the HF world or the high frequency world where you're doing worldwide communications at that point. It's fun as well, but we're not going to scroll into that tonight because I see we've already
That's just
killed an
putting
hour.
www in front of the website. That's what www like. We already know that, man.
World Wide
you're
Web.
so
Yeah.
Yeah.
I know. I'm so behind. Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm still in the 14 4K bond modem days. I got it. Yeah.
I can almost hear it now.
Yeah, I know, right? Yeah, we won't scroll into the HF side of the world. Maybe we'll set that aside for another episode, or we'll do maybe another live episode where we try to do some communications. But figured we'd just touch on the gateway radio and how it is you can get bit by the radio communications bug, because once you get bit, it's a deep rabbit hole. Dave in the live chat is almost convinced that he needs this. You absolutely do, Dave. Because then you could be a radio nerd, and radio nerds are cool.
And then you can figure out how to get in touch with Eric, and then you have yourself an Eric.
It's true. Yeah.
I haven't because we've got a way of communicating. But yeah, no,
it's back at prepperpodcast.ca. Send me an email from Winlink. Away we go.
Yeah, see, he said a bunch of stuff I don't understand, but hopefully you did, because Jesus, fuck.
Yeah, no, there's tons and tons of rabbit holes you can go down. Start out easy, grab the little Baofeng radio. It's cheap, it's doable, it's easy to set up for the most part now with it being documented online, and just practice with it. And then from there, as you get comfortable with it, just move on to another one and move on to something else and figure out kind of what works in your preparedness setup. And that might just be the Baofeng, and that's it. That might be it for what you need to cover off your communication needs, and that's fine. If you want to go down the rabbit hole of talking to the world, that's a whole other kettle of fish. But start out with just the easy stuff. There's no need to. Some people will, radio shame you for all the Baofeng or however you want to pronounce it. It's garbage. It's no good. Hey, you know what? It gets the job done.
I'd rather have 6 handhelds than one that doesn't work.
You got it. Cool. I'm cognizant of the time, and I could go on all night about this stuff. But any other questions or clarifications or anything from the live chat or the panel? Crickets.
I'm all questioned out for tonight. I'll probably have a few questions in a few days when I reprocess and maybe listen again. But
we got to answer this one from Melissa. Can you order food with radios? Of course you can. Why wouldn't you be able to?
Yeah, you just type in the Uber Eats number on the screen here, and then
of course
you talk to the guy.
Mm-hmm.
Your address is already on the database.
You got it. Yeah. So if you can make contact with somebody on the other end and you ask them to call the pizza guy to deliver pizza to you, done. So absolutely you can.
Hey, that's how they do it up in Alaska. They even drop it in by bush plane.
Look at that.
Man, I have to get my license so Eric can call me and I can order him a pizza.
That'd be fantastic.
The only reason I want my license now.
There you go. Now you got some motivation. We're going to make it happen.
Yeah.
Radio pizza for all. I like it.
No, you know what? We're going to radio some Maple Buffalo.
I was just going to say, how about some Maple Buffalo here?
You guys seen those, eh?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Maple Buffalo pizza. Here we go. Awesome. Well, there's no other questions or last minute clarifications. I've nerded out for an hour and change here, so we'll move on to upcoming events. And Terry seems to have bailed on us. He thought that we wouldn't notice him, just quietly stepping out there. But we saw you, Terry, to go fix your Ford, I guess.
His computer might be Ford.
His computer might be Ford. Or he had the Ford repair guy coming over, and he had to let him in. Something happened there with this Ford, I'm sure.
Well, they are fix and repair daily, so
this is true. Or maybe maybe he ran out to put a radio in his Ford. We'll give him that.
Right? There you go. Maybe
that could be it. So, Terry was going to talk about the annual Preppers Meet 2025. It's coming up. It's actually Preppers Week now. So July 7th to the 13th at the Slovenian Hunters and Anglers Club in Alliston, Ontario. It's always a fantastic gathering. if you haven't been, get out. It's just full of all kinds of awesome information and trainings and, fun people. And hey, there's campfires and beer. You can't go wrong with that. So come on out and check it out. Again, July 7th to the 13th in Alliston, Ontario at the Slovenian Hunters and Anglers Club.
And if you do come, you can all bring your handhelds and you can all compare them.
It's true. I might even program it for you if you bring a cold beer.
Allegedly.
Just saying.
Or a cigar.
And see whose antenna is bigger.
Cigar, beer, and we'll measure antennas. I like it. Nope. All right, Jeff, you got a weather blurb?
Yeah, I'll keep it really short and sweet. If you're in the Great Lakes or the eastern seaboard of the U.S. And you like snow, you're really going to like what's coming up for probably at least the next 7 to 10 days. We're going to see several waves of snow. I don't think there's going to be anything, like massively huge amounts, but you're going to see several different waves of snow. We had one yesterday, and I have another one probably tomorrow. I think Wednesday will probably be the biggest day. Could be seeing anywhere 4 to 6 inches or, 10 to 15, 20 centimeters of snow for us that use the metric system. So, yeah, keep your shovels ready.
And your snowblower's blowing.
Wonderful. Just what we need, more snow. Well, with that wonderful news, I'll bring episode number 261 of the Canadian Prepper Podcast to an end. You can find the audio podcast on iTunes, Spotify, maybe a local repeater or two. Of course, your favorite podcast app. Please submit a review. It does encourage the algorithms slightly, at least. And, does let other people know we're out there.
And we do record these shows live on YouTube, Facebook as well. If you want an early peek at the shows, please subscribe to the YouTube channel, Canadian Prepper Podcast. Click the notifications tab and you'll get an alert when we're going live. Anybody wants to reach out, you can contact me at feedback@prepperpodcast.ca.
If you'd like to reach out to me for whatever reason, Off the Wall Customizing, I think we're still on the Tickety Talks and Instagrams. I don't know, because I don't take care of any of that. I have no care for it. I am on the Discord. I don't do anything on there other than occasionally comment on something or say something funny. And I am also available Monday nights on the other CPP on YouTube's at 9 o'clock for the Canadian Patriot Podcast, where we critique government news.
And you can find me on YouTube at Pat in a Bunker or Facebook at Pat Hirsch. And if anybody, for whatever reason, needs to get a hold of this crazy Midwesterner, my email is cruisin165@gmail.com.
All right, you can check out Rapid Survival at rapidsurvival.com and get me there on the live chat. You can also email feedback@prepperpodcast.ca. So thanks for joining us. Until next time, be prepared, stay safe,
and keep learning.